I'm Brandi Kruse. Coming up today on Undivided, protesters stop Amazon employees from getting to work over the company's carbon footprint. Plus,
this will allow future survivors to seek civil damages for injuries without worrying about the statute of limitations.
Finally, a public safety bill I can get behind. And this will come as a surprise to no one, but the latest gun regulation to be signed into law by Governor Inslee will do absolutely nothing to stop quote-unquote gun violence. That and more coming up today on Undivided. Remember, you can support our show for just $5 a month by signing up at undividedpod.com. Hello and welcome to Undivided. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. I'm Brandi Kruse. I don't feel well today. Not feeling great. I feel me. But tell me feels bad.
Oh, no.
Nicole's like, you're just telling me this?
I know, and you're just now telling me
We've had a busy morning. I didn't have time to complain to you about how my tummy hurts.
Oh, man.
But you know what? There's nothing more important than pushing through to be here with all of you. I kind of wish protesters had tried to block my entry into work today so I could have taken the work day off. That's what happened outside Amazon. Is there any group of protesters more annoying than climate protesters? I just don't think so. I mean, aren't they the ones who always, they like ruin priceless paintings and artifacts and stuff? You know, they'll like,
oh yeah,
throw crap and paint on things or glue their hands to things or cement themselves with quick drying cement to the concrete. Those kind of ones it doesn't bother me because I'm like, you're the one who's going to be in a whole truckload of pain because you quick cemented yourself to something. Or they glue themselves. They're like, oh, help me get my hand off. I glued it to something.
Well, aren't all protesters the same protesters?
Yes, in some regard they are. They are. But Amazon ones, particularly annoying. So this is the headline from the Seattle Times. Seattle climate protesters blockade Amazon corporate HQ building. The protesters stood in front of Amazon for about an hour Wednesday morning. On 6th Avenue, a group of protesters used cars to block the entrance to a garage and a line of bicycles to block foot traffic. Now, I hope all those cars were electric. Certainly, they wouldn't be gas cars, but I have somebody checking in on that for me. They're sorry for the inconvenience, organizers said, but the tech company's carbon footprint is already massive and is expected to grow large, despite corporate leadership promising the opposite. They had such riveting chants as, hey, hey, ho, ho, fracked gas has got to go. Fracked gas is a fossil fuel. Renewable energy is way more cool. Wow, that is catchy.
Clever.
Fracked gas is a fossil fuel. Renewable energy is way more cool. Hey, that's pleasant. I don't mind that at all. Then the protesters, part of a group called Troublemakers, are hoping to force Amazon to distance itself from a controversial natural gas pipeline project spanning from Canada through Idaho and Washington and into Oregon. Amazon support technician Dowd Wolk said he understood the protesters' concerns, but that the action was preventing him from getting to work. Quote, everybody's got to pay rent, he said. It's just what it is. I think one of the things you have a video, Nicole? Oh, that's right. This is the one we were trying to figure out if they were using the F word, but I think they're saying fracked. Okay? Fracked, not the other F word. So listen.
We'll see.
Amazon for pumping up the GTN Express. Stop Amazon from pumping up the GTN Express. The climate crisis looming, it makes no fucking sense. The climate crisis looming, it makes no fucking sense.
I don't know. Maybe that is the F word.
I think it is the F word.
All right. Sorry, guys. We'll beep that out in the podcast. I thought their chants were harmless, and then they're just dropping F-bombs. I think one of the things that gets me about this, and this goes back to something we talk about on the show all the time, which is you can't give a mouse a cookie. You have a company like Amazon that I would argue has gone above and beyond to try to, despite its size, reduce its carbon footprint. Climate Pledge Arena. Jeff Bezos named it the Climate Pledge Arena, and I get it. I mean, Inslee has shown us that just saying you care about the climate does not necessarily translate into actually caring about the climate. But Amazon is one of those companies that I will say have tried very hard to appease the climate crowd. Nicole was pulling up some of their goals like the climate pledge fund, things they're trying to do to reduce their carbon footprint. Like, they talk a lot about this, and to say that they're not interested in doing it, I think is disingenuous. But it also just shows that if you give a mouse a cookie, this is what's going to happen. They don't care that Amazon named an arena the Climate Pledge Arena. They don't care that Amazon is taking steps to try to reduce its carbon footprint, which it has no obligation to do. But all they care about, and once they get a little bit from Amazon, you give them a little cotton cookie and then they'll take more. And so I just don't get with these corporations that try to appease sort of a woke fringe minority. I don't know if they think there's a point at which that fringe political minority stops asking things of them. It was the same with like the taxation and all of that. And it's like, Amazon was trying to be a good corporate citizen in the city of Seattle. I mean, it has spent money trying to help with the homelessness issue and public safety, et cetera, but they're always going to be vilified. They're always going to have this fringe political minority that wants to come and take money from them, tax them, and scare them out of the city and thinks they're a net negative for the city. So if it's Amazon, I would just be like, I just don't care to acquiesce to any particular crowd that might have a pet project or a pet issue. We're just going to run our business and do what we want to do. And then if they want to protest outside the spheres or pull up probably their gas vehicles to block a parking garage as they're talking about fossil fuels, then so be it. So give a mouse a cookie. They'll just protest outside your headquarters anyway. All right, I noticed this today. There was a bill that Governor Inslee signed into law yesterday that is, this is the first I'm hearing about it. I guess I don't hear about every single bill that gets across the finish line, but I gotta say, it is a Democrat-backed, public safety-related bill that I kind of love. And so since I've been so hard on the Democrats lately, I thought I'd just throw them a freaking bone today and say that I do not mind this one bit. So the bill will, actually, here's the video of Inslee signing it into law first.
This will allow future survivors to seek civil damages for injuries without worrying about the statute of limitations. Thanks, Representative Farvar. Here we go.
So this is a bill that will make it so that there is no more statute of limitations in civil child sex abuse cases in the state of Washington. So we're talking about civil. So basically, if you get abused as a child, then at any point in the future, you could come back and seek civil damages against that person. So it's not eliminating the criminal statute of limitations, but the civil one. And I was kind of wondering who would be opposed to that. I mean, wasn't it Florida that said that they're going to give the death penalty to people who abuse children, potentially in some cases? I know this isn't that, but I don't know what would be controversial about saying that, hey, yeah, if you sexually abused a child, then yeah, you always have to worry about the fact that they might come back and they might be able to sue you and leave you destitute. I kind of love it. This is from Center Square. No more statute of limitations in civil child sex abuse cases in Washington. And they did speak to someone who was opposed to it. Kerry Silverman is with the American Tort Reform Association, and he testified against the bill, saying he was concerned about it opening the door for a flood of legal action going back decades, to which I'm like, who cares? Who are you afraid of it opening the door for a flood of legal action against?
Maybe two cases that don't have any proof?
Well, here's what he said. He said, never before, to our knowledge, has the state of Washington completely eliminated a statute of limitations for civil action. There may be no doubt that a plaintiff experienced horrific abuse, but the question may be difficult or impossible to answer when the perpetrator is dead, the staff at the time is gone, the records haven't been saved, etc. But then they wouldn't have a case. That's what I don't understand, is I get it. And first of all, I also understand that there are false accusations, but there have always been false accusations. There will continue to always be false accusations, regardless of statute of limitation issues. But if the concern from this guy who was opposed to it is, what if you can't prove it? Then you can't prove it. I mean, the burden in a civil case is less than in a criminal case, but there is still a burden. It's basically more than 50% likely that it happened based on the evidence that you present at trial. So I just don't understand the concern that, this is going to bring, first of all, it won't bring a flood of legal action going back decades because it's not retroactive. So the bill itself says from the point that it becomes law, moving forward, instances of sexual abuse that happen from that point moving forward, there will not be a statute of limitations for them when it comes to taking civil action. The other reason this makes a lot of sense to me, and this is what the Democrats argued as well, is oftentimes this happens to kids. It happens to children. So you're not going to take a civil action against someone who sexually abused you when you're 7 years old. Like, what, you're going to have an 8-year-old be like, I'm going to sue them? No. Oftentimes, these allegations, you don't even have someone who's old enough or brave enough or able to speak out about it until they're into adulthood. So I don't understand, like, oh, this person gets off the hook because they preyed on a child who wasn't old enough to tell on them or to come back and say something and do something about it. Putting a statute of limitations on that, to me, almost rewards the pervert and the predator for preying on someone who's young. Does that make sense? And same, I think there was an effort in Washington not long ago to also extend the statute of limitations when it came to these cases in criminal matters. And I believe in that for the same reason. I mean, I know we all have a constitutional right to a fair trial and all these things, but I don't think that time should buy you that right if you've victimized a child. Like, you want to, victimize a 5-year-old and just hope that, the clock runs out before that child goes through therapy and realizes that they want to do something about it? So no. Sorry, no peace for predators. No peace for predators. No peace for predators, since we're talking about chance.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm curious your guys' thoughts on that. Do you have any sort of constitutional concerns with that or anything? Because if you bring a case back 50 years later, and the person isn't around to defend themselves, I guess what are you suing for then? Like their money from their estate or something like that? But you still have to prove a case in a civil matter. All right. I wanted to talk a little bit today about the homeless industrial complex, which is still raging on. There have been a ton of stories that we've covered on the show lately about communities just being really frustrated, obviously with the homeless crisis and the state that it's in, but also this feeling that elected leaders aren't being transparent with them, aren't cluing them in to the conversations on, just as an example, low barrier shelters that might be opening up in their communities, that you have people who might live there who are actively using drugs. And common sense people know that active drug use comes along with a certain criminal element. So overarching, as you've got the homelessness crisis, we aren't going to be able to fix it until we defund the homeless industrial complex. But we also aren't going to be able to fix it until we can repair some of the broken trust that communities members have with leaders who are trying to approach solving this crisis in ways that don't work, in ways that waste money, and in ways where they're not properly consulted about it. So I was just reminded of remember when Dow Constantine came out and he's like, we're going to buy all these homeless those hotels and we're going to turn them into homeless housing. And he was like, this is the solution. And honestly, I didn't mind it too much. It's like, if you've got an old crap hotel, motel, and you want to pick it up and have it be some sort of temporary shelter situation, fine. I want it to also be connected to services. So there's some requirement that, hey, if we give you a hotel room to get you off the street, then no, you can't sit in that hotel room and do meth or fentanyl or whatever it is on the public dime. And we don't expect you to get active help for that. I'm not okay with that. That doesn't make any sense. But I was reminded of the Red Lion Hotel in Federal Way. And I saw a story on it recently. So here's an old story just to remind you. So back in 2021, King County was scooping up these hotels using just a ton of money. And one of them was the Red Lion, what used to be the Red Lion Hotel in Federal Way. So they bought this thing in 2021, and this is a story from the Kent Reporter back then. And it was supposed to be emergency homeless shelter, and then it wasn't opening. Remember this? And it wasn't opening. And it was just sitting there empty, and people are like, what the hell? And then it turned out that it was so contaminated with meth that they couldn't open it and put people in it. And they were trying to hide that, if you remember at the time, information from the public. They weren't being forthcoming about why this homeless hotel wasn't opening. Well, because it had such bad meth contamination, nobody even wanted to work in it to fix it up. So anyway, this story from back again in 2021, it says the meth contamination was cleaned over late 2021 and early 2022 and has been remediated. This is a story from February of 2023. And this was from King County at the time. It said, but the situation caused a flare-up over communications about the former Red Lion project. Although the county bought the hotel property in the fall of 2021, it's still unknown when the hotel will be ready to open. So again, that story goes back to 2023. It was the Kent Reporter trying to check in. What's up with this hotel? You bought it 2 freaking years ago. And in 2023, King County said, oh, well, we have all the, meth cleaned up. And so I was just thinking about this because Federal Way City Council had a meeting. And they were giving an update on this freaking Red Lion Hotel, which still isn't open today. A hotel they spent millions of dollars buying with the promise that it was going to be part of this master solution to homelessness. Tried to hide from the public that it was so meth contaminated, the workers didn't want to go inside it. Fast forward 2 years, King County says, yep, we got all the meth cleaned up. Now you fast forward a year after they said that, and the thing still is sitting there empty as just a money sock that isn't doing anything to help homeless people get off the streets. So before I play these 2 clips from this Federal Way meeting that happened a few days ago, I want to note, this video looks like it's from the 1970s. The Federal Way, look, I am nothing if not a steward of taxpayer funds, but you need to get a better video system. This looks like one of those, video from one of those bad court shows, like those court TV shows, but from the 1970s. It's that bad. So when I play this video, I had to tell you that if you're watching the show today, because you'd be like, damn, Brandi, how far back in the archives did you go to pull this video up? No, so in the Federal Way meeting, they had someone from this King County project come in and give an update on the Red Lion Hotel and when it might be open.
I appreciate the opportunity to give some updates for you all on the Federal Way Red Lion location, which we know is also very important to the community. If you've been around the site over the past couple weeks, you've probably noticed a little bit more activity on our front, and we are pleased to update you that we have engaged with KMB Architects and have identified funding for this project. And intend to move forward at a fairly aggressive pace, but we hope that it's also a very attainable pace as well to get this site open by winter 2024. So just a few months away.
Okay, hold on. First of all, you're not allowed to use the phrase aggressive pace when you're talking about completion of a project that started in 2021. So let's not use the phrase aggressive pace. At this point, any pace that you move at is far too slow. But they just found architect and funding for the project? What do you mean you just found an architect and funding for the project? What have you been working on for 4 years? When we bought the hotel, you didn't have all of that in place and the funding to turn it from a crap meth-infested hotel into a place that the county would use as an emergency shelter? This is the homeless industrial complex. And meanwhile, I was reading the Center Square and it was said $9 million. This program, Health Through Housing Initiative, received $9 million from the state to fund rehabilitation of the Federal Way Hotel. So what do you mean you just found funding for it? You got $9 million for it. Did you have to spend all of that on getting the meth out of the walls? And then you had to go find funding somewhere else. And now you're telling us, don't worry though, we think we're on an aggressive pace to finish it by the winter of 2024. This is a project that would only be okay in the public sphere and in the government sphere, because the private sector would never allow something like this from the very beginning. I want to play a second soundbite because the guy who is in charge of the Health Through Housing Initiative for King County was at this meeting, and I'll give him credit. He was there to address any community concerns and, answer questions from community members who might have shown up. But he was asked by one of the council members, we've been talking about this project for so long, and there seems to still be community concerns around what kind of issues it might bring to the city. And community members still feel like in all this time that they haven't been listened to. Why is that?
And I've been listening up here for a year on this thing, and it's back and forth. And your presentation, I must compliment you. You'd be good in front of a boardroom, but where's their disconnect, in your opinion?
I think we move at the speed of trust, the way that we like to talk about in King County, where I think ultimately, continuing to engage, have these conversations, to get shared education, shared awareness around what this actual resource is. It's housing and not shelter. I think language is really important.
Okay, first of all, if King County has to move at this, what do you say, move at the speed of trust, then that's going to be a really slow process. We move at the speed of trust. If that's the case, then I'm just going to chalk this up to it'll be 100 years before any of this gets done. But it's that government speak that he has there about, it's about, making sure the public understands this, that they get it, what it actually is, that it's not housing, it's shelter. And it always comes back to me and sounds as if they think the public's dumb. Like that they think that, if the public just understood that it's shelter, not actual housing, maybe they wouldn't have such a, sense of permanence about it, that it's going to bring all these issues to the community. No, people are smart. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that if you have a low barrier shelter where people might be allowed to use drugs while they're in there, getting back on their feet or whatever it is, that there's going to be societal issues that come along with that. And the refusal, I guess, to just admit that head on. This is what I want from these freaking people. Did I just swear? Oh my God. I've never said the F word on the show.
Wow.
Holy moly. Sorry, guys. Sorry. Okay, we're going to beat that out of the regular show.
How's your tummy doing?
Here's what I want from these freaking people. I think it's because the fracking thing earlier.
Yeah.
And then I was like, wow, though, Mike's going to be so mad at me for dropping the F-bomb on the show. Is it really so much to ask government? And this goes for Inslee and so many different things we talk about. To just come in and say, hey, we have a lot of homeless people. We need a place to give them shelter. Here's what we're concerned about too, because it's realistic. We understand that if we have a homeless shelter in an area, we might have an uptick in crime. So what can we do about that? Well, we can maybe provide some additional funds to law enforcement. We can have proactive patrols. We can make sure that there's some around-the-clock security at this. We know that's going to be a concern of yours, so we want to talk to you about that ahead of time. Like, is that really so hard to do? Every citizen knows that that's going to be a concern. So why not come into all of these projects, whether it's the one that was in Kenmore, or the one currently happening in Redmond, or the one that was proposed, the expansion of the homelessness shelter in the Chinatown International District. Why not come into every single one of those projects as public servants and just be honest about what the implications would be? Because we all know. Hey, Chinatown International District, we're thinking about expanding the shelter. We really need the space. We understand that you already have a lot of this sort of stuff in your neighborhood. And so we want to come to you proactively and say, we know that crime is a concern. Here's what we've got lined up to deal with that. You don't think that that would go over better? You don't think that it would stop some of these projects from getting all the way up to the finish line and then having community input kill them? It was like with Inslee and the carbon tax. I was like, why didn't he just, when he wanted to pass the bill, say, hey, I think this is so important that I want you to know that I know it'll raise gas prices, but I believe it's worth it. And then you wouldn't have, maybe, if you were honest about it and people knew to anticipate it, then you wouldn't have had such immense backlash that now we're going to repeal the thing. Based on that anger and that frustration and people feeling like they were sold a bill of goods or they were lied to. So it's like you might think that not being honest and forthright about the negative aspects of these projects is going to help you, sneak them through or get them to the point of now it's too far along, no return. But we see that hasn't happened. When you don't communicate early and often with the public, projects like this are going to go the wrong way. And the fact that we don't have public servants who understand that is really quite baffling to me. So the saga of the Red Lion Hotel continues. I wonder what they'll call it when it does open. But yeah, 4+ years, and now they're saying by winter. If I were them, I wouldn't even give it. Why would you give a timeline when all of your timelines have been failures? That's like, at that point, just stop giving me an estimate because you're not going to beat it anyway. Absurd. Okay, we're going to get to our segment Unbelievable next. Inslee has signed a new law that will further regulate gun owners and will do absolutely nothing to stop what they're calling a gun violence crisis. First, I've been talking about my success on the Eastside Weight Loss Clinic program, and I hear so many stories from those of you who have tried the program when I'm out and about, and I just love hearing that. I love hearing the success. For me on the program, if you've been considering it, one of the things I've said is how fast the results come is really one of the things that helps you stick to it. Because it's not magic. You do have to stick to the program to realize the type of weight loss that is possible. But man, I lost almost 30 pounds in 2 months. And so it gives you this real energy boost to just keep going. I'm down almost 40 pounds total. So if you've been thinking maybe you need to shed a little weight before the summer months and just get happy and looking your best again, there is plenty of time between now and summer. So start with just a free 15-minute consultation with Dr. Ryan Coogan and his team at eastsideweightlossclinic.com. That's eastsideweightlossclinic.com. Ask them any questions you have before you commit to the program. But I'm telling you, it will be life-changing if you can stick to it. All right, Governor Inslee has signed a new gun law which will fine gun owners if they do not report their firearms stolen within 24 hours. Let's talk about it in our segment, Unbelievable. Boop. All right, not too many comments about my F-bomb. I was just
money
looking
for it.
Oh my gosh. You guys always give me money when I swear, which you understand is not like a good
Encouraging.
That's positive reinforcement for something that's negative. Okay, so we know that every legislative session, Democrats have to push through regulations on law-abiding gun owners. And sometimes it's the big ticket items. I mean, we talked about one of the ones that came out of this session that I think we won't even fully understand the repercussions of for a year or two, and that is the one that over-regulates gun shops to the point where it's going to be so expensive for them to do business. They're just going to have to go out of business. And that's what Democrats want, right? They don't want you to be able to buy a gun. So anyway, there's this other one. And when I first saw it, I'm kind of like, okay, I guess, it's not the worst thing in the world. But then the more I thought about it, the angrier about it I got. Because then I was like, wait a second, that makes no sense. I don't know how you enforce that. And beyond that, it's not going to do anything to reduce the number of shootings or the number of fatalities happening in the state of Washington. And I was like, you know what? Now I'm full-blown mad about it because it's just another virtue signaling bill where they can say, oh, we're cracking down on guns and then doing absolutely nothing to actually crack down on criminals who are using guns to commit crimes. So here's the new law, HB 1903. This is part of that law. You as a gun owner will have to report a theft of your firearm within 24 hours, or you could face a $1,000 fine. So it's within 24 hours of when you discover the theft or loss. So either you lost it or someone stole it. And if you don't do that, you could face up to a $1,000 civil infraction. The bill also requires law enforcement agencies to register stolen firearm reports with the FBI's National Crime Information Center, which is used by police to pursue suspects and locate stolen items. That second part I'm fine with. Yeah, like let's share information about stolen guns. And so then when it pops up somewhere, we kind of know, where it went and all that stuff. But let's talk about the practical problems with this, right? You could not know your gun was stolen for years. Right? Mm-hmm. Let's say it's someone who who got into your gun safe or something. People have gun people. They have a lot of firearms. And I'm not saying that if a stranger came in and broke into your gun safe that they wouldn't notice that. But let's say you had someone who you knew who stole a gun from you. You might not know that for years. And I don't think that makes you a particularly irresponsible gun owner. I just don't think you have gun owners going into their safe every night and counting. Did I have all my firearms here today? Does that make sense? So I just don't understand. So you might have it the urgency there. I get it. If you're I know my gun was in my center console or something. I know it was and someone stole it. Yeah, I think you should pick up the phone and tell law enforcement right away. I do agree with that. I think most law-abiding gun owners would hey, someone stole my gun. So I just don't see that as a problem. Times when it's delayed, I think is for other reasons. You're not sure. Gosh, I swear, my God, this gun was here and did I lose it or did someone steal it? And so you might want to take, a couple days to find it. So I don't think that there's a malintent that people have not to report their firearm stolen as soon as they realize that it's stolen. So I just don't think, and for people who don't, you know what they're going to say? Oh yeah, I just noticed it was stolen yesterday.
Exactly. How do they prove it?
Right. How would they wouldn't be able to prove it. So you'd be like, yeah, I looked for it and stuff, and I don't know, I thought it was missing like a couple weeks ago, and now I'm pretty sure I can't find it. So now I'm going to call, and they're going to be like, when did you lose it? Like, yesterday. Did you notice it was gone yesterday? They're just going to lie about it, right? So it's just, practically speaking, it's one of those feel-good things that's just really not going to do a whole lot. And that's kind of the issue here, is there are so many gun-related efforts that could be undertaken by the government and law enforcement that actually will make sure that fewer guns get into the hands of the wrong people. I mean, gosh, we were talking yesterday about these two 16-year-olds who were found shot to death their bodies dumped along the interstate in Seattle, and all the media was showing these pictures of them as children, literal children. And then on social media, there are pictures of them. One of them had 4 guns, like 2 tucked into his waistband, 2 in his hand. The other one had, and they were illegal because they had magazines that were past 10 rounds.
Well, and they are under the age of 18.
And they're under the age of 18, so they weren't able to have them anyway. But these videos were all over social media. Like, they're so ballsy with it. Mm-hmm. Like, you're 16-year-olds and they've got 4 guns and illegal guns, and they're so confident that they're not going to get in trouble for it. They post about it on social media. They take pictures and videos of them handling these firearms. Like, if those aren't the kind of people who, if they lost their gun, they're going to call up the police and be like, hey, yeah, my gun I wasn't legally allowed to have, and that was stolen. I lost it. Like, I just don't, that's what it's so ridiculous. And we should be dumping a lot of money into law enforcement agencies to have them go out there proactively and work on getting illegal guns that are in people's hands illegally away from them, gang members, confiscating firearms, doing investigations that are going to lead to, drug investigations. Every time there's a big drug investigation and a big drug bust, what do they always find with it? Money and guns. Money and guns. So hell yeah, let's give law enforcement the money they need, the tools they need, the bodies they need, the time they need to do these investigations that are going to get illegal guns off the street. And then on the back end, you have to throw the freaking book at people when they use guns in the commission of a crime. That's where the system's falling short. All this stuff, I don't even want to hear about it until the state mandates firearm enhancements. So firearm enhancements should not be something that a prosecutor can wish away, or that a defense attorney can strike a deal for their client and go away. Firearm enhancements should be mandatory. So when you're convicted of a firearm enhancement, that's flat time. So you're not going to get any good time for behavior on that. That's how the law is supposed to work. And I actually think that could serve as a deterrent if it's actually instituted. But then it's a pretty good punishment. We're a state. You say you care about gun crimes. You say you want to reduce them. This person used a gun to commit a crime. Maybe they shot someone. Maybe they killed someone. Maybe they used a gun to hold up a convenience store. Well, guess what? Now you're also getting a felony firearm enhancement. You're going to get 5 years, and you can't have a single day taken off that sentence. And you're going to serve it consecutively. So you're going to get out, you're going to do your time on this, but you still have that tacked on to the end of it. So the fact, until we're doing that, and that's a mandatory thing that you cannot wish away no matter what, all this stuff is stupid. All this stuff is for headlines and to make Inslee feel good and to make Bob Ferguson feel good and say, we did this and this, and gun control is going to be a huge thing that Bob Ferguson talks about on the campaign trail, and how he was the one who pushed to get rid of, these so-called weapons of war, and won't ever acknowledge that he has done nothing through these bills. As crime stats bear out, he's done nothing to reduce the number of shootings and to reduce the number of illegal guns on the streets, to reduce the number of gang members who are killing each other. You've done nothing except make yourself feel good and give yourself a few notches to get the progressive vote when you run for governor. And you should actually be ashamed of yourself for pretending like you care about reducing shootings and pretending like you care about crime and wasting so much of your time and your political capital doing things to get elected governor that haven't made a bit of a difference. I'll also note on the gun front, shame on the White House, but also Eric Adams. Sometimes Eric Adams in New York just says what needs to be said. So I go back and forth on the guy, but I'm like, okay, sometimes he gets it. So I don't know if you guys heard about this. An NYPD officer named Jonathan Diller, he was shot and killed during a traffic stop last weekend in Queens. So this is from ABC 7 Eyewitness News out of New York. Officials say that the suspects he stopped refused to roll down their windows. Diller ordered the passengers ordered the passenger, Riviera, to show his hands, but instead, Riviera allegedly pulled the trigger of a gun and shot Diller below his vest. Jones, who is the other individual in the car, is charged with criminal possession of a weapon and possession of a defaced firearm, meaning it was a ghost gun. Records show Riviera has been arrested by the NYPD 21 times, 9 of them felonies. He was released from prison in September of 2021 after serving 5 years for criminal sale of a controlled substance. He previously spent 3 years in state prison for a 2011 assault and was released in October 2014. So here, one of them, 9 felonies, 21 arrests, still hanging out there with an illegal gun, used it to kill a cop. The other one in the vehicle, Jones, has 14 prior arrests. He was arrested for second-degree criminal possession of a weapon for having a loaded firearm on April 17, 2023. He was out on $75,000 bail. So this guy is out on bail for having a loaded firearm, a criminal in possession of a loaded weapon, and he's still driving around with a loaded weapon because he does not care about consequences. He'd previously served 10 years in prison for attempted murder and robbery charges, was released in November of 2013. It says the heavy rap sheets for both men left Mayor Eric Adams outraged and called this incident a recidivist problem. So Eric Adams calls it what it is. Like, we have an issue here with career criminals who obviously have not learned their lesson. And we have that in Seattle too, where you can have people who are arrested 50 to 100 times. We had some stories like that. And then they're right back out on the streets doing the exact same thing. Nothing that happened in the criminal justice system anywhere along the way was properly designed to try to actually change the behavior that they were engaging in, which can be mental health issues. It can be, I think, economic. That's it. That's what it is for a lot of gang members, right? Is they're raised in an area where just they have no economic outlook on life, and so they want to gangbang their way into, I don't know, making quick money or whatever it is. So Eric Adams calls this a recidivism problem. Well, what does Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, call it?
President Biden is deeply grateful for the sacrifices police officers make to keep our communities safe. This shooting is yet another painful reminder of the toll of gun violence, that what it's doing to inflict on families and our communities and our nation. And that's why the president signed more than 24 executive actions. That's why we're able to pass a bipartisan agreement to deal with the gun violence that we're seeing in this country. Obviously, more work needs to be done. We need Congress to continue to act on making sure that our communities are safe.
Yeah, and what they keep pushing is gun control. What they keep pushing are gun bans, prohibitions, that clearly 2 career criminals, one of whom is out on bail for being a felon in possession of a firearm, clearly they don't care about. The overarching mistake Democrats make when trying to reduce what they call gun violence is to believe that they can regulate their way out of it. But they can't, because laws and rules and regulations only work when someone's willing to follow them. And criminals don't follow laws and rules and regulations. The only way out of it is through increased enforcement. The only way out of it is through increased penalties. The only way out of it is to make sure that when someone has proven time and time again that they cannot be trusted to live within the confines of a lawful society, that we have to do everything we can to keep them away from people who they might hurt, to keep them out of society. And so, look, again, we have a constitution, we have constitutional rights. You can't just simply throw someone in prison for the rest of their life because they had a drug charge or whatever it is. But we have to have a way where someone who, again, is a career criminal who keeps reoffending, where they have more requirements when they get out of prison every single time, and where we use the laws on the books to our advantage to make sure that they stay in prison as long as possible, because cutting them deals at this point is absolutely absurd. So I don't know, the violence problem is not going to be fixed until they stop blaming it on an inanimate object. I did ask you guys in our daily subscriber show poll what you thought of that 24-hour notice HB 1903. I don't know if you guys are gun owners or not. I imagine some of you are, but I asked, do you believe that reporting, the requirement to report a firearm stolen within 24 hours is a reasonable timeline? Yes or no? So a lot of you are saying, no, that's not a reasonable timeline, although there's a chunk of you who disagree. Donald Shaw says 24 hours is fine. A gun is something a normal person would not misplace. Would you not call the police on any burglary of anything of importance? Which again, I think is a good point. And that's one of the reasons why it just seems like a very unnecessary law. Let me see. Kendrick says, if you know about it, sure. If you don't know about it, you will report it when you know about it. It's just that simple. This is feel-good optics because the court has to prove you knew about it and did nothing. Having a gun stolen, having to provide the police agency all the information, these claims are just as false as anything Jay and his clowns say to the public. It would really be nice to stand face-to-face with that man and tell him he's full of SHIT as a 40-year resident of Washington. Let me see here. Jackie says, we have guns and most of them stay secure in a safe, minus our everyday carry. And if that's stolen, we would notice and report it. Honestly, it's pretty common sense, in my opinion. Yeah, it's common sense to report it stolen. And I think the old law was like, was it 5 days? I want to say it was 5. Hold on, I've got it here. I want to say before it was 24 hours. I want to say it was 5 days. Yep, 5 days. And so it gave people a little more leeway, but again, it doesn't matter. As long as you have a law in the books that just says you have to report your firearm stolen, law-abiding gun owners are going to report it stolen the second that they know it's stolen. And everyone else isn't a law-abiding gun owner. And so they're not going to follow the law that you pass anyway. It just doesn't make any sense. Okay, before we get to a little bit of national news and an update on poor Ronna McDaniel. Thought she had a job and now she doesn't because MSNBC hosts whined about her. First, I have been encouraging you guys, if you're thinking about selling your home and I don't know, getting out of Washington to somewhere more sane, to check out a few real estate agents, but make sure that you check out our friend Wes Jones at sellwithwes.com. One of the first things he's going to do is give you a free market analysis. So you know, based on kind of the strength of the market and where the interest rates are at, you have a reasonable expectation of what you might get for your home. But of course, there is that question right now about, is the Fed going to drop interest rates? So far this year, it has not. Wes Jones explained to us what he thinks will happen if the Fed doesn't drop interest rates in 2024.
If they stay where they're at right now, I actually think that values will stay closer to where they're at. We'll see lower appreciation. We'll see appreciation, but it'll be modest. But if they start to come back down, well, that's when I think we'll start to see more of the multiple offer situations and the bid ups in home sale prices.
Yeah, so you want to be ready as soon as the Fed drops interest rates and people rush to the market. So make sure you talk to Wes about their Listing Boost concierge service. The sooner he has an opportunity to connect with you, the better, because that's more stress-free. He can go in, they can look at what might need to be done cosmetically. They can even manage those projects, help you pay for it up front, and that way, you know what? Your house is ready to hit the market when it's most advantageous. So sellwithwes.com, sellwithwes.com, a better way to sell your home. All right, dipping outside of Washington State, Ronna McDaniel is out at NBC News. So if you watched the show yesterday, Ronna McDaniel, former RNC chairwoman, had been hired as a paid political analyst, essentially, for NBC News. And this is where a lot of political types these days are winding up at the news networks. But there had been basically the who's who over at MSNBC and even at NBC, Chuck Todd, Rachel Maddow, Morning Joe, they all on the air talked about how they did not agree with the decision to hire Ronna McDaniel. And they said it's because she propped up Trump's stolen election claims. So this now from the New York Post, NBC News fires ex-RNC chair Ronna McDaniel after Rachel Maddow and Morning Joel revolted. NBC Universal chairman Cesar Condo took, quote, full responsibility for the decision to hire McDaniel and can her less than a week later in a memo to furious staffers Tuesday evening obtained by the New York Post. Quote, after listening to the legitimate concerns of many of you, I have decided that Ronna McDaniel will not be an NBC News contributor. Our initial decision was made because of our deep commitment to presenting our audience with a widely diverse set of viewpoints and experiences, particularly during these consequential times. Quote, I want to personally apologize to our team members who felt we let them down. While this was a collective recommendation by some members of our leadership team, I approved it and I take full responsibility for it. Well, good for you. I just find it crazy that they would not have considered that the NBC hosts would throw a temper tantrum. How would you not have anticipated that? And so you hired this woman, and I don't know if she left her job with the RNC believing or already knowing that she had this job waiting for her with NBC, and now a week into it, she's already lost it. I'm sure they're going to have to give her some sort of major payout, or else she'll turn around and sue them. But just a reminder, here's sort of the tiff or the whining that the MSNBC hosts engaged in on the air.
If you care what I think about this, I will tell you the fact that Ms. McDaniel is on the payroll at NBC News, to me, that is inexplicable. I mean, you wouldn't hire a wise guy. You wouldn't hire a made man like a mobster to work at a DA's office, right? You wouldn't hire a pickpocket to work as a TSA screener. And so I find the decision to put her on the payroll inexplicable.
In this instance, NBC News, either wittingly or unwittingly, is teaching election deniers that what they can do stretches well beyond appearing on our air in interviews to peddle lies about the sanctity and integrity of our elections. What we've also said to election deniers is not just they can do that on our airwaves, but that they can do that as one of us, as badge-carrying employees of NBC News, as paid contributors to our sacred airwaves.
I mean, every time I hear that our sacred airwaves, I'm like, these people completely lack self-awareness. And look, I don't care what happens to Ronna McDaniel. I don't really, doesn't bother me that they decided to hire her and fire her. I have no skin in that game. What did bother me, as I expressed yesterday, is all the news outlets, all the news networks, they continue to hire former White House press secretaries. The last several of whom spent a lot of time gaslighting on behalf of their bosses. I mean, it's their job to basically make the president of the United States look good and try to avoid any undue criticism. And then you're going to put him in a news setting? And so that's perfectly fine when it's like Jen Psaki and you're going to give her your own show. But when it's Ronna McDaniel, then you're like a full-on revolt on the air and you're going to say it's because you have high journalistic standards and ethics? Give me a break. That is a shockingly low level of self-awareness. If they're going to reevaluate, they should reevaluate hirings like this. They should reevaluate hiring political mouthpieces. Of course. And that should go for CNN. That should go for Fox News, MSNBC, NBC, CBS, ABC. Your job is to hold powerful people accountable. There is no need for you to hire someone who just worked for however many years as a political mouthpiece. You think and think that you're going to get the unvarnished, honest to God truth from them. I don't know where along the lines the network started hiring so many of these, political. I mean, I think George Stephanopoulos, we gave the example yesterday. He's one of the more high profile examples who he got the job and now he's, he's like the face of GMA, right? Is GMA? GMA. Making a bunch of money, and he's a former Clinton press secretary. So it's just like there's a long tradition of this, and let's not act like they are going to bring the whole truth and nothing but the truth to the table. Okay, we're going to get to your questions and comments and live stream coming up next. First, I have encouraged you guys to take the First Mark Challenge. Truly, every one of us needs insurance. The question is, would you rather deal with your insurance every year, finding new policies, finding the best rate, or would you rather have a local company that's been in this business for a long time, do all of that work for you, and do it for free? I know which option I decided on. I went with First Mark Insurance after taking the First Mark Challenge. Here's Dave Taylor. He's the CEO of First Mark.
I really want to encourage folks, don't try to navigate this current market by yourself. Mm-hmm. I believe you need to get with a broker. Okay, obviously I'd love them to come to First Mark, but at a minimum they need to be with a broker that works with numerous carriers that can give them the advice they need and really help them navigate this right now because it's complicated.
It is. And honestly, I'm a year in with First Mark. They're already reaching out proactively with an actually personalized email saying, hey, is this all correct? Are you still, need insurance for these things? Is there anything additional that you and Mike want to talk about? It's such a wonderful personalized experience. And again, it's free. You never pay First Mark a dime. So take the First Mark Challenge today. FirstMarkInsurance.com. FirstMarkInsurance.com. The very best part is they work for you. Okay, questions and comments from the live stream. Baron of Gray Matter with a $10 super chat. I don't love the super chat, but I'm going to read it because it is a super chat. Says, luckily the lefties abort their children and gender affirm the rest. Soon they'll be out of the gene pool. Good times. A little dark there, a little dark. Deanne Sanderson says, those protesters make no frackin' sense. I agree. They really convoluted chanting. I feel like we've gotten good at chanting lately. Vote yes, pay less.
Vote yes, pay less. I
Less.
thought you were going to still go. Sorry.
Nope, that was it. I was just going to do it
That was
once.
much of a chant.
Heidi Ryan says, don't they have any jobs? Not jobs that matter. Matt M says, every chat these chucks come up with sounds like an 8th grade junior high pep rally. Yeah. On child sex abuse and a bill that will eliminate the statute of limitations in order to take civil action, Deanne Anderson says the problem with no statute of limitations is how can an innocent person prove their innocence after a long time? Yeah, I can see that as well. I think it would depend, though, because I'm trying to put myself in that situation. Like, if it's been long enough, I also think the same goes for a person who is going to accuse an individual of that. So I think that although there is no concrete statute of limitations, I think naturally there is a shelf life on those cases. Because especially if you were a child and you hadn't told anyone as a child, maybe till later in life, that is still going to be a hard civil case to prove. How do you prove that as a child you were subjected to sex abuse? What kind of evidence might you have 20 years later? I would have to believe that in order for that to be possible, the evidence would have to be overwhelming. So I don't know, it's tricky, but I also don't think that this is going to lead to, civil cases in sex abuse 30, 40 years after the fact. Greg Anderson says, I have no patience with folks who abuse children. They should be brought to justice. Once you abuse a child, I also think there is no way they can be rehabilitated. I agree, because that's mental. That's a mental disease. I don't know if you can do something so depraved that there's any sort of rehabilitation possible for you. That's why I'm a big fan of McNeil Island. You just put them on an island with each other. Dano, on the $9 million that was spent buying the former Red Lion Motel, where'd it go? Why do they need more funding? What's happening? He says the $9 million were used for studies and six-figure salaries. Why is your volume on, Nicole? Calm down over there.
It wasn't all that whole time. That's so weird. It just came
Interesting.
on.
Sally gave me $10 for the swear jar. Carlene gave me $10. Don't give me money. Don't give me money for swearing. I cannot believe I dropped an F-bomb today. I've never
you're not
done that.
Feeling good. Maybe your senses are off.
I've never done that.
I don't know.
Matthew Cook says with a super chat, Brandy's mad as hell and she's not going to take it anymore.
Fair.
Boo Boo Bar with a $9.99 super chat, cuss jar. The government is listening, Brandy. Country Guy says, you were right to say these effing people for the swear jar. Yeah, and that's the thing is, like, sometimes I just get so, what is the word? It baffles me.
Baffled?
I get so baffled by our government. Truly.
Enraged.
But it's like, if you want, why sign up for public service if that's not something you're interested in doing? It really is not hard. And we all understand what the possible societal ramifications of these homeless housing projects are.
Right.
It's really not that hard to go into it, acknowledging that and planning for it. Like, hey, you spent $9 million on this hotel. Can you put, I don't know, $500,000 toward helping the police or paying for security or something like that? Because you know that's going to be an issue. We need places for the homeless to go as they're getting off their feet. We're so far in, but you have to approach it from the very beginning with everything out on the table, or these projects are going to go south.
I would say I'm glad that they bought it when real estate was a little bit better and maybe they got it for a deal, but we all know that they overpay for these anyway. So that's
there's
not
no
a thing.
negotiation because
Nope.
like who's going to buy the old Red Lion Motel
For $9
no
million?
one. The government for $9 million.
No, because everybody else would knock it down. So
Right.
they would be paying, they are not paying $9 million.
No,
for
the
that.
government's like, no, we won't knock it down.
we'll
and then
pay
they're
the
like,
full
oh
price.
gosh, the meth is so bad in there, nobody wants to go into it. So it's like, come on,
They
man.
probably could have knocked it down and built another
And then
quicker than this.
And then the thing is, so they spend all this money and all this time on meth remediation. So the workers would even go into the thing. Well, they're going to allow people to do drugs in there. Guaranteed people are going to do drugs in there. And then 5 years from now, it'll need more meth and fentanyl remediation. Although, something just came to me. I thought it was okay to be around meth.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Well,
King County on our
trace in
public
the
transit. Yeah, said that 100% detection of meth in the air on our public transit wasn't a big deal. So why do they need to remediate the meth in the
Right.
hotel? That doesn't make any sense.
I know, those poor bus drivers.
Poor bus drivers, for the
Man.
love. It's ridiculous. On the homeless hotel, Val Jean says, come on, Brandi, you don't really believe this hotel deal was anything more than just a way for these criminals to line their pockets, do you? I'm starting to think otherwise. Guns. Mandy says, too bad they don't put this much effort into stolen vehicles, right? Donut lover am I.
Okay.
Let's victimize the victim again by applying a fine after their property was taken. Shake my head. Mark my word. Mark my word. 5 years from now, we'll be doing this show still, and I'll go back and do a public records request for how many civil fines were given out to someone who did not report their firearm stolen within 24 hours, and it'll be zero. It'll be zero. Because there's no way to implement this sort of law. It'll be zero.
We should put that on
somebody
our
remember
calendar.
5 years from now, check back, and it'll be zero.
Calendars.
Okay, Rick Johnson says what our legislature is doing to crack down on criminals. Oh, what is our legislature doing to crack down on criminals who use guns? Nothing. Nothing. And in fact, they've been proposing just the opposite. Do I have to go through the Rolodex of bills that would have taken it easy on people who use guns to commit crimes? I mean, the reducing the punishment for drive-by shooters who kill someone, that was the one that sort of took the cake. But then they wanted to get rid of some sort of enhancements and, make sure your points, your offender score doesn't rack up as much. And for these juvenile gang members who are out there shooting at people, racking up an offender score, they're like, well, that shouldn't follow them into adulthood. It's just ridiculous. So yeah, the gun thing is totally disingenuous to me until they actually start taking it seriously. Y says, with so many gun control laws in our state, gun crimes sure are going up. Yes, they are, Y. Yes, they are. NWA V8R with a $4.99 super chat. Is that from them? Must be 21 or older in Washington for a pistol or semi-automatic rifle. Oh, was he answering someone?
I don't know. I just put what he says.
Yeah. Okay, NBC News, Andy Stevens. At least NBC has formally admitted they are not news anymore. Sally S. says, the bosses at NBC are weak for caving to the demands of their no-talent staff. Trina Jones, nothing reaffirms their non-biased news reporting like airing this grievance. Almost seems like a stunt.
It really is gross. I just feel like, and if they had determined that she was a good hire and to just let your employees whine about it because they just don't like the other side. That is very clear.
Yeah.
So they're going to whine about anybody that's coming from the right. They were going to whine about, and you weren't. But this one, you're going to just let it go.
And then they want to simultaneously say, but we really value putting other opinions on there. No, you
and
don't.
apologize for it. Grovel the way you did. Ugh,
just wild.
Gross.
A couple more. Baron of Gray Matter with a $2 super chat. You've never heard of E. Jean Carroll, Brandi? No, I have, and E. Jean Carroll, whether you believe her or not, I mean, she did win her case, and so who am I to say that he didn't do what she accused him of doing when she went to a court of law, and she won her case, and then she went on MSNBC and bragged how she was going to spend the money on a shopping spree, so that wasn't great. But look, who am I? I wasn't in there. I didn't hear the evidence. I'm not saying she's lying. And the guy has said some pretty weird stuff, like he can grab women by the hoo-haws without their permission, so let's not act like this isn't something he would be capable of. MD says, Brandi, you've clearly never been accused of something you didn't do. Have I ever been accused of something I didn't do? Probably not something criminal.
I think it's it's definitely, I agree. If you actually are a victim of child abuse and you're accusing somebody, and I don't think there should be a limitation, I guess. But that happens a lot, the sex abuse thing. I know of a couple of cases right now that are pretty terrible, and I'm pretty confident that all of the facts that I know are going to lead to it being dropped, but you got to go through the process. And I know somebody that's been kicked out of school. I know somebody that, there's a lot of consequences that come with just being accused, whether you're proven innocent or not.
Yeah.
And so I get some of this concern where it encourages people to go for the money, right? But because if you're willing to go for the money, which is a lesser burden of proof, right? So why aren't you going for the crime, or why didn't you go for the crime? So,
but is that not going to happen already with people who do it 10 or 20 years later? You know what I mean? People who don't, before the statute of limitations was changed, isn't that happening already? Where people are falsely accused and still have to prove themselves in a court of law, whatever it is. I mean, there are criminal cases too where someone's falsely accused and they spend 20 years in jail.
But what they're saying is here's an easier way to make this person pay. I mean, again, if
Yeah.
they did it, I'm totally for it.
Right.
But they're saying here's an easier route if you just want to get some money out of the deal. It's a less burden of proof, and let's just go this direction.
Yeah. Well, I think
So, I
civil
don't know.
cases when it comes to sex abuse are pretty common because statute of limitations issues on the criminal side are more stringent. So we see a lot of this. I mean, like R. Kelly and what's happening now with Puff Daddy, who I learned is the same person as P. Diddy. Like a lot of this stuff arises out of civil cases and then it turns into criminal cases. I mean,
Right.
Jeffrey Epstein and all of that. So there is absolutely a place for civil cases within the criminal justice system to try to prove and root out criminal behavior. And it's been that way forever. And I guess what I'm saying is whether if someone's gonna wrongfully accuse you of something, they can do it in 10 years or they can do it in 20 years and that person's going to do it anyway.
I guess
I think that's the exception, not the rule. So it's
Yes.
kind of fair to steal the opportunity from someone who couldn't come forward as a child, but who, like, maybe there's a pattern of behavior that emerges, like
Right.
we've seen with Boy Scouts or with the church, and then later on they can all be like, this happened to all of us. I just don't think flimsy cases are being moved forth 40 years in the future.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that it's always suspicious when there's a money element, right? Because money makes people do crazy things, and so when there's this lower burden of proof and money's involved, I don't know. I think it opens the doors for people to take advantage of situations because money motivates, right?
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
I never really get that anyway. When you can, when there's civil cases for murder, things like that, because of the lower burden of proof, and then you can just like say wrongful death and give them some money. I don't understand the less burden of proof. There should be proof regardless.
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't know.
less burden of proof because you're talking about taking someone's money away versus taking their freedom away or their life away or whatever it is. But money is still significant if you're going to bankrupt someone.
Sure.
So it's interesting.
But they get
I think
around
this
it
is
anyway.
a worthy debate to have. I can see some of the points that you guys are making. My retort to that would be, what do you think the statute of limitations should be then? For civil cases involving sexual abuse against children, what do you believe a reasonable statute of limitations would be after they turn 18? Okay, good questions and comments today. Really keep us thinking, which I think is good. Let's get to our closing sanity check. I'm trying, what?
We have another.
Oh, gosh, gotcha.
We have another
Nicole's
sponsor.
Oh, yes. I have been encouraging you guys to go ahead and work with Zach Abraham and his team at Bulwark Capital to make sure your retirement's properly protected. I mean, all of us work really hard for our retirement, and especially with the ups and downs that we're seeing right now, crazy markets, election year, global unrest. Do not leave your hard-earned retirement up to the whims of whatever insanity happens in 2024. So Zach Abraham and his team at Bulwark Capital are hosting a risk management strategy live webinar tomorrow, March 28th, 3:30 p.m. It's virtual. It's totally free. You just have to sign up for it. KnowYourRiskRadio.com, KnowYourRiskRadio.com, and you can listen in passively. I think that's important to note because it's in the middle of a workday. So it's not something you have to be actively engaged in where you're going to ask questions. You have an opportunity to, but you don't have to. So if you want to sign up and listen to it passively, you can do that as well. So don't miss Zach's free 2024 Outlook live webinar tomorrow, Thursday, March 28th. Register now, KnowYourRiskRadio.com. That's KnowYourRiskRadio.com. You can learn how they actively manage every portfolio. They do it with Bulwark's risk management strategy, always seeking opportunities to lower your risk, lower the cost, and give you as much upside as possible. Investment advisory services offered through Trek Financial LLC, and SEC registered investment advisor. Investments involve risk and are not guaranteed past performance. Doesn't guarantee future results. Where is the line where the gender ideology insanity has gone too far? I have to believe that there's a line somewhere where Americans will just absolutely put their foot down and revolt and say, all right, I'm not playing this game anymore. Maybe this is it. Let's talk about it in our closing sanity check. The trend of biological men participating in competitive sports against women, I think is getting more ridiculous by the day. Now, look, I'm opposed to it wholesale. I don't care at what age, at what level of competition. I don't care what sport. Hell, I watched some clip the other day on a biological man beating a woman in a competitive pool tournament. Even if it's pool, if there are separate categories, they're separate for a reason. And if you want to have a category for, races or whatever it is, then have a separate category for people who are gender diverse, whatever, that's fine. But then you look at some of these examples and you just have to wonder, reasonable people, how have they not absolutely revolted over this yet? So this has to be one of the worst examples I've seen, because you are talking about a sport that inherently is about someone's physical strength. Weightlifting, competitive weightlifting. So this is from Libs of TikTok. A man won first place in a woman's weightlifting competition. Vicky Piper, a biological male, competed as a woman at the Masters National Weightlifting Championships this weekend in Reno, Nevada. He won first place, beating out all the other women in his category. And they went on to say, Vicky's a cheater. He's not a winner. Why are women standing for this? And I gotta say, it does just kill me a little bit when I see competitors, women, who I think feel as if they have to be okay with it. There's these two women in the photo next to him, and I'm just thinking, like, look, are you pretending? There's no way, and I think it's feeling societal pressure to get up there and get your second place or your third place and just be like, I'm cool, I am inclusive, and I'm okay with this. There's no way they're okay with it. I don't care how strong you are as a woman. You're not going to be as strong as a man in your weight class in a weightlifting competition. So I think these truly absurd things just have to keep happening. I've said what we need are some Class A male athletes who are like the best of the best in their field, like LeBron James and Michael Phelps. And they need to stand up for female athletes by competing against female athletes. That's what has to happen. Because nobody can challenge them on it, right? LeBron James, he can be like, nope, I'm in the WNBA now. Like, you wanna bring me on, or whatever it is. And they have to just beat them to a pulp at whatever sport or athletic competition that it is. And that's the only way that someone's going to wake up, that reasonable people are going to be like, okay, this has gone too far. Let's reel it back in. Insanity. All right, Nicole, do you have something to say?
Oh, I threw in there a couple super chats that were just thrown in there.
Oh, Baron of Grey Matter, she won a defamation case, not a sex case. Holy crap. No, she won a case that was sexual harassment. And then she won a defamation case, right?
I'd have to look that up. I can't remember. There was a lot of cases.
I'm pretty sure that there was a burden of proof around sexual, it wasn't assault, it was misconduct. But yeah, I mean, I can't right now in the moment tell you if you're right or I'm right. I can on the show tomorrow, but maybe we save those super chats for the show tomorrow so I can answer them. Baron of Grey Matter, we'll get back to your super chat tomorrow. But I'm pretty sure that there was an element, because in order to defame her, him saying she's a liar, I didn't do this, whatever it is, but the underpinning of her case was that he's defaming me by calling me a liar and saying that I'm spreading these falsehoods about him, but she had to prove that there was something there to defame about. Does that make sense? So I do believe that had to be an underpinning of the case. But we'll read your super chat again on the show tomorrow, and I'll make sure that I'm not mistaken on that.
Really quick,
But
Northwest Aviator is just clarifying that's his name. It's just abbreviated.
Northwest Aviator. Oh, I see what you're doing.
Yeah.
Gotcha. All right, that has been it for today's episode of Undivided. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. Don't forget to shop our merch store, undividedpod.com, undividedpod.com. And while you're there, sign up to support our show for just $5 a month. Undividedpod.com. We'll see you back here on the live show tomorrow at noon.